From physics to psychic is just a quantum leap. For the next hour, Santa Barbara author and psychic Pam Oslie is ready to take your call at 564-1290.
Pam provides valuable insight into your personal world,
Your relationships, and how you can be more consciously aware of creating the life you want, the life you deserve. Call now, 564-1290, and make the leap.
Welcome to the Pamela Oslie Hour. Thank you as always for joining us. I'm so glad that you like to come to the show and listen to these fascinating guests who we're talking about consciousness and spirituality and evolution and anything that can help relationships, love, money, anything that can help you have an improved and advanced consciousness life. We're here for you. So we have another special guest on tonight, which is he's so fascinating. We have Garnet Schulhauser on the show today. He's written a couple books. The book we're going to talk about today is Dancing on a Stamp, which I can't wait to hear why he called it that. I do know because it's in the book. But Garnet Schulhauser is a retired lawyer who lives near Victoria on Vancouver Island with his wife, Kathy, and a little dog. So a retired lawyer. This man is a grounded, practical, logical person. And he talks about in this book how his life changed dramatically one day in 2007, so not even that long ago, while still practicing law. And he had a life-changing experience. So listen carefully to some of the things he now knows and what he's experienced. And Garnet, is it okay if I call you Garnet?
Sure is.
Welcome to the show again, Garnet Schulhauser with his book, Dancing on a Stamp. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show today. So let's start with what your life was looking like before you had this amazing experience.
Well, I was practicing law, corporate law in Calgary, and I had been practicing for quite a while in a very large firm. And I was very much a typical straight-laced, stuffed shirt lawyer, strolling around in navy pinstripe suits and very much of a very closed mouth, sort of keep to myself kind of person. Never spoke about religion or spirituality or anything else. And so my period after my meeting with my spirit guide really was already quite different from how I was before. So how I met my spirit guide, and by the way, just to back up one step further, I was raised as a Roman Catholic. So I was all the way, through from the early childhood. I went to church quite often, followed all their rules, learned all their dogma, served Mass as an altar boy. So that was sort of ground into me, all the dogmas of the Catholic Church. And as I got a little bit older, in my 20s and 30s and 40s, I started to question a lot of these beliefs of the Church, and to me, they didn't seem to hold a lot of water. Like there were a lot of holes in what they told me. So I discarded a lot of them and then started searching for a new paradigm, something new to latch onto. And, some answers to all the big questions in my life, like, who am I, why am I here, what's my life's purpose, and what happens to me when I die? And so I was still searching for those questions on that fateful day when I met the homeless man on the street. And I can tell you about that if you want me to carry on.
Oh, absolutely. People need to know that this guide took the form of a homeless man just on the street.
So how I met him, I went for a stroll one afternoon. It was a sunny Monday afternoon in May in 2007. And I went for a stroll to get some fresh air. And I was walking down the street, sort of my mind far away, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this homeless man jumps in front of me. Now, he looked like a typical homeless man. He had the stringy, greasy hair and scraggly beard and dirty clothes. And my usual tactic when I met these people, Pam, was to do a quick sidestep and go around, because they often frequented that street. This guy was different. And I stood there because he had these amazing, dazzling blue eyes and that were penetrating deeply into my soul. I felt like he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said and done, which was really quite amazing because we had never met before. I've never seen this guy. And at the same time, these eyes were sending me this wave of pure, warm, unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. And so I just stood there basking in this guy's glow in the gaze from his eyes, and I had no desire to walk away or run or say anything. I just really enjoyed it. I was like a deer caught in the headlights. And so I'm not sure how long I stood there. It was a bit like a time warp. Eventually, though, he broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And then he quickly disappeared into a nearby store. Well, when I finally collected my wits, Pam, I decided I better go find this guy. So I went into the same store that he disappeared into, looked around. He hadn't come out. There was only one entrance, but he was nowhere to be seen. I went back on the street and walked up and down trying to find him, but he was gone. I just couldn't see him anywhere, and he had totally disappeared. So that night, as I walked back to my office, I resolved that I would have to come back the next day and see if I can find this man, which I did next afternoon, same time, same street. I started my trek up and down to see if I could find him anywhere. And when I was about to give up after about 15 or 20 minutes, then I spotted him sitting by himself on a bench.
Mm-hmm. And he started having an interesting conversation with you.
Yes, he. Well, first of all, I opened the dialogue by saying to him, like, who are you and why did you stop me the other day? And he said, I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey. And then my lawyer brain kind of kicked in, the skeptical brain, and I said, well, how do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because you've been sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish. So he just gave me a big smile and said, well, looks can be deceiving because you look like you're a successful lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade. He said you could turn around, go back to your office, and see if you can find your answers, the answers you've been seeking for the last 15 or 20 years. See if you can find those answers on your computer with all those emails from your clients. And my intuition then got the better of me, and it said, oh, no, I really have to sit down and talk with this guy. I mean, what did I have to lose? Half an hour of my life? Not a big deal. So I sat down. We began our dialogue, which was really an amazing dialogue because from there it went on for several months. And I found out early on that this homeless man was really one of my spirit guides in disguise, and his name was Albert.
Did you think you were hallucinating, or could you tell this was something really special?
Oh, I knew it was something really special because I'd never ever had that feeling of peace and security that he had sent towards me. So the gaze from his eyes was something very special, and I just sensed that this guy was a very special being, a very special person, and not an ordinary person. And I knew I wasn't hallucinating because I actually I reached out and I touched him. I looked around. Everything on the street was very normal. People were walking by. The sun was shining, the whole thing. So I knew I wasn't hallucinating, and this was a very real person, but a very special person. And that's what got my attention, and that's what made me go back to find him and then to start the dialogue with him. And then as soon as we started talking, I knew immediately, yes, this is meant to be a life-changing event for me. He came here for a special purpose, and I felt very fortunate that he had chosen to stop me on the street that day.
Well, and just a couple quick questions on that, because I want to get into some of the things he taught you, which are so cool. So could other people see him?
No. He was very real to me, and I actually could touch him. He felt like an ordinary person. I had touched him a few times. He said that I was the only person who could see him, and obviously, or touch him for that matter, and that he had chosen to appear in that form to sort of introduce me to him and gradually ease me into the conversation. Because he said that if he had just started talking, and what happened after the first 3 visits was that he no longer appeared in physical form. He was just a voice in my head, and we communicated by telepathy. Mm-hmm. So he said, so most of our dialogue was by telepathy, but he said that he appeared to me as the homeless man to ease me into it so that I wouldn't, if I just started hearing a voice in my head one day suddenly, I probably would have thought I'd lost my mind, which is probably true. And so this way, he showed up in the physical form, and then when he started communicating by telepathy, I recognized the voice. I knew who he was, so I was not fearful or concerned about my sanity, and everything just sort of flowed along smoothly from there.
And Garnet, why do you feel like he chose you? Just because you were not happy, you were searching, or why did he choose you?
Well, I did ask him that. First of all, yes, he said because I was searching. I mean, he'd be wasting his time with some people who weren't asking the same questions as I was, and who wouldn't be open to the answers that he was about to give me. So I was searching answers, and he felt that I had a reasonably open mind to what he was going to tell me. The other reason was that he said that shortly after we began our conversation, he told me he wanted me to write a book about our conversation, which resulted in my first book, Dancing on a Stamp. And he said also that in some previous lives I'd had some experience in writing, and so they thought some of that might flow through to this current life. And so the two requirements were that I was asking questions, I had an open mind, and I had some ability to write. And so that's why he chose me. Now, he actually told me that he and I planned this all before I was born. But of course, I don't remember any of it. But so I'm sure that we had a lot of discussions about this before I was born and about the timing and so on. But the timing was just perfect because I was really tired of practicing law at that stage and was thinking about, retiring and trying to figure out when I should. And when he appeared in my life, it all of a sudden, there it unfolded. It was like, here's a new path for me. I need to get off the old path and start the new path because for me. So, and so the timing was perfect, but I know it was no accident. It was all planned beforehand.
You guys had discussed it before you got here. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back and talk with Garnet Schulhauser, his book, Dancing on a Stamp. And you can go to his website. Oh, let me spell it for you. Garnet, Garnet, Schulhauser, Schulhauser. I'll repeat it again later in the program. You can go to his website.com, hisname.com, and we're going to come back and we're going to find out some of the things that his spirit guide Albert taught him that can absolutely, it changed Garnet's life, and it can actually change your life too. So we'll be right back after our commercial break. Welcome back to the show. This is Pam Oslie with you this evening with our special guest, Garnet Schulhauser, who's written a very cool book along with his companion spirit guide, I guess I'll call him Albert, or you called him Albert, but Dancing on a Stamp. It's very cool. It's in the format of like Conversations with God, where Garnet asked questions and he got answers, which is very cool. So, Garnet, what's some of the more profound questions you asked? I mean, all of them to me were profound. I loved all the questions you asked in this book because I go, God, that's something I would have asked him. So, what's some of the more profound questions you asked Albert? Like, for example, why are we here?
Well, that was one of the big questions in my mind, Pam, and Albert had a great answer, which really flew in the face of what the Catholic Church and the Christian Church have been teaching for centuries. He said, we're here not because God put us here for some reason. He said, we came here, incarnated on earth, by our own choice. And before we came here, we were existing as an eternal soul on the spirit side, or beyond the veil, or the other side, whatever you want to term it. And we're all eternal souls whose purpose really is to grow and evolve and acquire knowledge and wisdom. And he said, we need to come incarnate in the dense plane like Earth, every now and then, because to experience things that we can't experience on the spirit side. So on the spirit side, we can observe what happens on Earth. We can observe what humans do to each other and to animals and to their planet and so on. And we can sort of see the effect of hate and anger and greed and some of the other negative emotions, but we don't really know fully what those are like until we actually incarnate on the earth plane and experience it firsthand. So learning on the spirit side is like book learning. We come to earth to get firsthand experience. And so we choose to come here. We actually map out sort of our life beforehand in what he termed a life plan, where we set out the major circumstances of our upcoming lives, our upcoming incarnation. So we'll pick the place of our birth, the identity of our parents, the first language we learn, the people who will be our siblings and aunts and uncles and grandparents and friends and so on, and spouses as well. And we do that for a very specific purpose because we have in mind some experiences to encounter and some lessons to learn. And so we plan that very carefully before we're born. Now, once we're born, we aren't allowed to remember what's in our life plans or even that we have one. And because we have free will to make actions and take decisions, once we're here, it's not predetermined. Our lives are definitely not predetermined because our free will actions and our lack of memories about our pre-birth planning means that we can go off course many times, and we frequently do. And so that's one of the big challenges we have as incarnating on this planet is that we'll often go off course, and we have to try to listen to the messages from our guides and the other signs they put out there for us so we can sort of get back on course. But sometimes we just fail miserably. So the big revelation is, why am I here? I came here to learn and experience, and I chose this life myself, Pam. Nobody put me here. So that's kind of very much different than what I was raised with. The other major part of that, which also flies in the face of Christian teachings, is that God, or the source, does not only did the source not put us here, the source does not make rules for us to follow while we're here, and the source does not control or manipulate the events in our lives. And so that means that if good things happen to you, it's not because God decided to be nice to you, or if you run into a tragedy in your life, it's not because God decided to punish you for some reason. God has nothing to do with it. What happens to you on earth is a result of your free will actions and those actions of everyone else around you. And go ahead.
So it's interesting. So we chose. We had an overall plan of who we wanted to meet, what we wanted to experience, what we wanted to learn. But while we're here, we still have free will. If somebody uses their free will to do something that goes off what their original plan was, or their intention for coming here, do they feel it? Is there help to get them back on path, or does it matter?
Well, I think our souls clearly want to get back on path, but our human minds sort of have, pardon the pun, a mind of their own, and so they don't remember what their soul wanted, and they don't always hear the messages. So our human minds get messages from two sources: from our spirit guides, who are like our coaches. Albert is one of my spirit guides, and from our souls, our higher selves. And they're always trying to send us messages to try to ease us back onto the path that was planned for us. But those messages are always very subtle. I mean, other than in my case with Albert, where he communicated very directly. Generally, in most cases, the messages are very subtle. They're like intuitive thoughts, whispers in your mind, gut feelings, coincidental events, things like that. And the real trick is to be able to discern those messages because they are so very subtle. And for most of us, it's so hard. We live busy, stressful lives. We have so many thoughts cluttering our minds every day. It's really hard to sort of pick out those thoughts from our guides and from our higher selves and recognize them for what they are and act on them. And so that's the real challenge. But we do get guidance, and if we're patient and we're careful enough to pick out our messages, we can actually learn how to get back on course.
So that brings up a great question now, Garnet. How does one hear their guides? I mean, obviously, we're not all going to encounter Albert or find a homeless man. Or I can just see all of us going downtown now going, wait, are you an angel guide? Are you a spirit guide? That would be great. So how do you know if you're listening to guidance, or how do you know if it's just your ego or some other part of you going, no, you really should go buy that house?
Well, I think and that's a very difficult thing to do, to discern which is where your thoughts are coming from. Is it generated from your human mind, or is it from your guides? What Albert says is that it's not easy, but the general message is to follow your heart. And typically, what will happen is if you have a reaction towards something, a decision or something that happens to you, usually the first reaction is from your heart, which is from your higher self and from your guides. That's usually the best one, and some people just call it, intuition, or my gut feeling says I should do this. That's really the message coming from the spirit realm, and you should pay attention to that. Too often, though, our minds will rationalize away that message, that decision, because our minds think we know better and we should be doing something else. So we often dismiss it, when we should be following it. So, but it's never easy. One of the best ways, Albert says, which sounds very cliched, is meditation. Is to sit quietly, quiet our minds, try to get rid of all the clutter, stop thinking about what happened yesterday and last week, or worrying about what might happen, next year, and try to sort of live in the present moment, and just get rid of all the clutter and sit quietly, and the messages will start to come. And the more you do this, the more frequently you'll be able to hear them, the clearer they will be, and the happier you will be, because you'll get rid of a lot of your stress if you can sit down and actually do this. And they will help you, at the major crossroads of your lives. When you have a major decision, if you listen, try to meditate, listen to what your guides are telling you. They are trying to steer you on the right course. The right course being the one that you had planned beforehand. But no matter what happens, even if you go way off course, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, when your physical body dies, you go back to the spirit side. Your soul goes back to the spirit side, and you can then sort of regroup, take a look at your past life, see where you made mistakes, and plan for a next time, because we can come back, incarnate here as often as we want until we feel comfortable that we've learned all the lessons we had intended to learn.
Well, you discuss this in your book, too. There's a lot of people that go, I don't want to come back here. It's too hard. So first of all, why would any soul choose to come to a place when we know it's going to be challenging, tough, painful here? Why would a soul choose that?
Well, because it's we look at things from a human perspective, and I'm the same way. When I first started talking to Albert, I thought, God, Albert, I don't really want to come back here. This is not a real fun place. I mean, incarnation on earth is no walk in the park. But he says, when you're on the spirit side, before you incarnate, things look very much differently. And so he said, for a soul, a life on earth, which is, like say, a lifespan of 80 years, is like a blink of an eye on the spirit side, because they don't have linear time like we have here. And so when you're on the spirit side, it's sort of like, well, I'll take this life. I'll be back before I know it. And there's lots of things I can experience, and souls do it because they want to expand their knowledge and their wisdom, and it's part of their evolution as souls. And they're not forced to do so, but they want to. It's sort of like, if you know of anybody who says, I'm going to climb Mount Everest, you can say, well, why would you want to do that? Spend all that time training to climb Mount Everest, and then all the hard work and the danger of climbing this mountain. Like, what's in it for you? Why would you want to do that? But of course they do it because there's a challenge there and they want to accomplish something. Souls look at coming to Earth in a similar fashion, and so it seems like to us it's like, no, I never want to come back here again. But Albert says when we get back to the spirit side, chances are we'll recognize what the life here was all about, and we won't have any problem coming back if we so choose. But if you really are entirely fed up with the life on Earth, Pam, a soul can say, okay, I'm never going back there again. I'm going to stay in the spirit side, or I'm going to incarnate somewhere else where life is easier. And so it's entirely up to us.
Right. I totally agree with you on all of this, Garnet. It's very cool. It was fun to read your book and go, hey, I know that one too. I know that one too. So that's very cool. I have a big question for you. Why do you feel, I feels like a lot of people are getting this advanced consciousness right now, and maybe there's some purpose that more and more spirit guides are showing up. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back and see what Albert had to tell Garnet about, what's going on right now and maybe why he wanted Garnet to write this book. So stay with us. We'll be back after a quick commercial break.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are not necessarily those of AM 1290 or the Santa Barbara News Press. The program's validity is for you to decide.
Welcome back to the show. This is Pam Oslie with you, and you can hear us every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We also rerun the show on Sundays at 8 a.m. if you missed anything, and all the shows are archived on the website, auracolors.com, so you can go back and hear all these fascinating guests anytime you want. Today, we are speaking with Garnet Schulhauser, who's written a book called Dancing on a Stamp. This is one of his books. His second book is Dancing Forever with Spirit. These are very cool books. I love your style, Garnet, about how you ask Albert, your spirit guide, questions, and he gives you answers. So, so why do you understand? I feel like there's a lot of people right now coming up with similar awareness, similar knowledge about guides are helping them bring this information to the masses right now, bring it to more people. Are you seeing that too?
Absolutely, and I run across it almost every day, in talking to people who've read my books or to radio show hosts, people on the street, and it's really quite apparent, and Albert has confirmed this. He said that the spirit realm is really working extra hard right now to send messages through many, many different channels on our planet, and they channel through. I'm one of the channels. You are, Pam. A lot of people who write books or write blogs on the internet, or radio show hosts, or speak at speaking engagements, and the message is the core of the message is very similar. Some slight differences, nuances in the interpretation, but the message is basically the same. And the message is: look at humans. You're at a crucial inflection point in your history. Right now, you've got a lot of advanced technology, but your emotional intelligence has not caught up to it. So we have a lot of negative emotions that are swirling around our planet, and that's like, fear and hate and anger and greed and so on. That causes us to do a lot of damage, a lot of harm to each other, to other creatures on our planet, and to the planet herself, Mother Earth. And he says humans really have to get their act together, so to speak, and get over this hump before we destroy ourselves and all their life on our planet, because we have weapons that can destroy all life, nuclear weapons and biological weapons and so on. And they really are determined, the spirits on the spirit side, determined to do whatever they can to help us. And they've been sending lots of messages to many different channels, as I mentioned. And the pace has really been increasing in the last 20 or 30 years, say. So I'm just one of the messengers. You are, Pam, whether you realize it or not. And there's so many of us. And what we're really trying to do is to spread the message to our fellow humans. There's so many humans out there who aren't even aware that we're at any crucial inflection point, aren't even aware of where they should be heading in terms of spirituality. And we really need to get the message to them before it's too late. Because, as Albert said, there have been other civilizations in human history before on Earth, like Lemuria and Atlantis, two of the notable ones that rose up to a very high level and then destroyed themselves. And they don't want our civilization to end up crashing and burning like the previous one. So they're really doing what he called a full court press to try to get the message to as many people as possible. And so I'm one of the messengers, and I'm trying to do that by writing my books. And I've noticed that there's so many other people these days who are getting the same message and are trying to do the same thing. Much more so than, say, in the 70s. Like Albert said, in the 70s I wouldn't have written my book, and if I did, nobody would have read it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very true. Now there's so many more people who have open minds and who are yearning to become enlightened, and that's the audience that we're playing to right now, Pam.
So is the intention to evolve the consciousness here so we're more enlightened beings on this planet? Are we supposed to be more awake? Are we just supposed to not destroy the world so that souls can come back to the exact same type of planet?
Well, we're trying to change and evolve and increase our vibrational rates as humans right now on the dense plane, and the goal is, by discarding negative emotions and embracing love and compassion, we can actually increase the frequency of our vibrations, and eventually the goal is to ascend up to planet Earth, what some people call the new Earth, in a higher dimension, and we can actually do the ascension, from our physical bodies. If we, do it properly, if we really do discard all of our negative emotions and increase our vibrations. But if we don't do it in this life, when we cross back over to the spirit side, we can then choose to incarnate one more time, back on the dense plane into a human body and give it another shot, or we can choose to incarnate into a human in a higher dimension if we want. But so many of us now, and in particular a lot of very advanced souls, according to Albert, are volunteering basically to incarnate as humans at this time on our dense plane in order to help humans on our present Earth in the physical form get over this bump and progress up the spiritual ladder before we destroy ourselves. So we can do it either way. And right now, you and I are both here in humans on this dense plane, and that's currently our mission right now, and hopefully we can succeed.
Are these guides that are speaking to us now, are they optimistic about our progress? Are they seeing progress? Are you?
Yes, I asked Albert that. I mean, at one point during our conversation, I became very discouraged, and I said, because he showed me a lot of the stuff that I wasn't necessarily aware of, all the abuse that humans heap on each other, on animals, on our planet, and so on. And I was very discouraged, and he said, don't be discouraged. He said, we have a long ways to go, but we've made a lot of progress in the last, 30, 40, 50 years. In fact, over the last centuries, we made a lot of progress, and we're getting better all the time. More and more people are becoming aware, and but we're not there yet. And so we really have to try our best to sort of make other people around us aware, lead by example, lead by telling other people where we should be heading. And he said, if we get it all together and work at it hard, we can get over this, and we can overcome our current inflection point and move on up. So he said very optimistic. We're getting a lot of help, not just from spirits on the spirit realm, but from our brothers and sisters on other planets in our galaxy who are more advanced, who have been watching us and observing us and trying to help us every way they can. They too do not want us to destroy ourselves again. I mean, they're tired of seeing humans rise up and fall down, and they really want to make this one work. And so we're getting a lot of help. So he was optimistic, and so am I.
Okay, cool. So this brings up an interesting concept. One of your my favorite chapters in your book is the illusion of time. What is the illusion of time, Garnet?
Well, the illusion of time we have on Earth, Pam, is linear time, which is that we believe we have a past, a present, and a future. But that's just an illusion. Albert says linear time does not really exist. On the spirit side, there is only one period of time, which is now. There's no past and there's no future. It's just one big now. That's a very difficult concept for a human mind to grab a hold of, Pam, as you probably know. And I had trouble. I struggled with it, and I couldn't quite get my mind around it very easily. And Albert said, you don't have to, understand it fully right now, because you will when you cross back over to the spirit side. But just so you know, linear time is just an illusion. It's something that's peculiar to the Earth plane, and it actually helps us in a way, because everything is sort of moves kind of in slow motion on Earth, which gives us time as souls when we do things and react to things. It gives us time to understand sort of how our actions and our reactions affect others. And so it's a very deliberate. Down here, it's sort of a very much of a slow motion kind of life, whereas in the spirit side, everything's almost virtually instantaneous. And as I said, no past or no future, just one big present.
You
so very strange to humans concept.
You use the example of being able to watch a football game and the replay or the slow motion, so we could experience it or really understand what was going on. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if things happen too quickly, in my example, if you're watching a football game and a play is run and the wide receiver scores a touchdown, you've missed a lot of it. So if you actually go back and watch the slow motion, you can then see that there was an amazing block thrown by the tackle, which gave the quarterback enough time to throw the ball. And you also notice that the wide receiver did an amazing deke on the defensive back to get around and get out into the clear. But when you're watching it in live action, everything happens so fast you can't catch it all. And so, being able to watch in slow motion, you see all this. And so that's why, on Earth, things just happen a lot slower. So that on the spirit side, everything happens instantaneously. So if you want to take an example, if you want to say, I want to have an apple will just appear in your hand. And here on Earth, if you decide you want an apple, well, you have to, get your car keys, put on your jacket, jump into your car, drive to the supermarket, pick out an apple, pay for it at the till, drive back home, and now you have an apple in your hand. But there's been a whole lot of intervening thoughts and actions happening relatively slowly, and to give you time to sort of appreciate what it is that's happening to you and how your actions affect others. So it's very much of a learning experience on our planet.
Yeah, so for those of you out there that get impatient that things aren't happening fast enough, there is value in things taking some time. It's funny. I'm smiling, Garnet, because I just taught a workshop this last weekend, or a few weekends ago, and I used the same analogy about how, all the action you have to take, but I went to go buy ice cream or chocolate as opposed to an apple, so you're much healthier than I am. No. Anyway, so I have a question, though. How does this apply? Okay, so I agree with you. There's no time in the spirit world. So how does this work with many lives or reincarnation? Are there all those lives happening simultaneously?
No, they don't happen simultaneously. They actually happen sequentially, but because it happens so fast, it's sort of like, each one is sort of like a blink of an eye on the spirit side. So they all happen sequentially, and all of our lives are documented, recorded in the Akashic records on the spirit side. And so after each life, when we go back to spirit side, we not only have a complete review of the life we've just finished, but we can go back to the Akashic records and view all of our other lives on Earth or elsewhere to see what happened there and to gain some wisdom from all of our previous lives. So they do happen sequentially, but, well, it's kind of like sequentially but instantaneously, if that makes any sense to you.
Right, because if they were just sequentially, wouldn't that take into consideration time, right? And if there's no time in spirit, then we just think that we're experiencing them sequentially.
Yes.
It's a complicated system.
Yeah, it is sort of a complicated, yeah. what happens is that when you, and I guess why I say sequentially is because you can't look at your future lives when you get to the Akashic records, only the ones you've already lived. So there is a sequence to your lives, even though they all happen, virtually instantaneously, because there is no time on the spirit side.
Right.
So it's a bit of a difficult concept.
It is.
Yeah.
We can't seem to grasp the dichotomy. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back and speak more with Garnet Schulhauser, who's written Dancing on a Stamp. You can go to his website, Garnet Schulhauser. Let me spell it for you. GarnetSchul, Hauser, Hauser. We will come back and find out more about what Garnet learned from Albert, his spirit guide, when we come back after a commercial break. Okay, bye-bye. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Pamala Oslie Hour on KZSB 1290 AM, the News Press radio station. Remember, you can also listen to us on auracolors.com. We are simulcast live around the world on the internet. So we are having a fascinating conversation with Garnet Schulhauser. Again, his book, Dancing on a Stamp. You can go to his website, Garnet Schulhauser, and we are finding out all kinds of insights. This book is really fun, everyone. Well, not just fun, it's really powerful and profound about karma. Well, actually, Garnet, let's get into, people have this, I'm paying for a bad thing that I did in another lifetime. Do we actually get punished for doing things from a past life?
No, karma is not a form of punishment. I asked Albert this question because I had read about all kinds of different perspectives on karma.
Mm-hmm.
He said, no, it's not a punishment, and it's not a immutable law of the universe like the law of gravity. But even the law of gravity isn't. But he said it's like he called it sort of a system of measuring sort of the pluses and minuses as you go through your lives on Earth. And so at the end of each life, you can look back at it and you can say, okay, how many negative things did I do and how many positive things did I do? Sometimes you'll end up with a positive credit, sometimes a negative. But he says that's really karma. But it's not. It doesn't dictate what happens to you in your next life. Like unlike some of the Eastern religions that say, if you had a bad life here, you'll be forced to incarnate the next time as a cockroach. It's not that doesn't happen. You always have the choice of whether to incarnate on Earth or not, and in what form to incarnate and what life to pick. That's always your choice. But he says the souls have a moral imperative. They have a yearning to advance and to evolve, and they feel that in order to do that, they don't want to leave negative karma behind. And so that means that if they've had a life with a lot of bad karma, they will go back into the next life and try to balance things out. And you can balance your negative karma in two ways. Either you can, arrange for something bad to happen to you to balance it off, or you can just do something positive. So there's two ways of sort of erasing negative karma. And so your choice when you're planning your incarnation, what would I like to do to try to erase some of the bad karma? So it's not a case of, I punch somebody in the nose and I'm going to get a punch back in the nose either in this life or the next life. It doesn't have to happen that way. And so, it just, for us, it's sort of it's a yardstick, a goal that we look at to see, okay, overall, after, 565 lives, where do I stand up on the scale? And if we're in a positive mode, then we'll feel fine. If we're negative, we might feel morally obligated to come back and try to balance it out, but we don't have to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's cool. Now, you also write about in your book, you mentioned the law of attraction. Did Albert explain to you how that works, or does it work?
Well, it does. I mean, he says, of course, everything begins with a thought. Thoughts are very powerful. They're waves of energy, and those waves of energy affect other energy and other mass. And, mass is just really congealed energy. So, thoughts are very powerful. But, and focused thoughts are way more powerful than scattered thoughts. And thoughts coming from many people are more powerful than thoughts coming from one individual person. So group thinking can accomplish a lot more than just one person. But he says that in terms of the law of attraction, we don't always manifest whatever we desire or whatever we visualize because for two reasons. On the earth plane, there's a shortage of material goods. We can't have everything we want. Unlike the spirit side, where if every soul on the spirit side wants an apple, they can all have an apple instantly. That doesn't happen on Earth. So there's a shortage of material goods. And the second major reason that we don't always manifest what we desire through positive thinking and visualization is that Our soul also has, our higher selves also has goals for us. And if for example, if I visualize that I'd like to have a red Ferrari, my soul may be dead against that because of the danger that I'll drive too fast and have an accident and kill myself before my life is ready to be completed. And so oftentimes you don't get what you want because your mind's thoughts and your soul's desires are conflicting, and they often cancel each other out. So that's why it doesn't always work. It does work perfectly sometimes, especially when your mind and your soul are in harmony, and hopefully that happens more often than not. But those times that it doesn't happen, it's not because the law of attraction doesn't work. It's just because there are conflicting thoughts that are out there that are preventing you from getting what you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can. So Garnet, your experience with Albert has to have dramatically changed your life. How are you different? How do you live your life now?
Well, quite a bit differently. I mean, I for one thing, I have a whole lot less stress than when I was practicing law. I now understand sort of the way things work on Earth. I understand now what my new role is. I understand my purpose and then where I'm going when I die. So I've got all that together, and I feel very comfortable with what's happening. And I feel a lot more compassion and love for other people. Like as you can imagine, I look at homeless people much differently than before I met Albert. Mm-hmm. I look at everyone much differently. I'm finding that I don't get angry and and fly off as easily as I did before. So if somebody cuts me off in traffic or whatever, I don't feel the urge to flip them the bird, like I used to. So my life is much more mellow, a lot less stress, and I think I'm a lot more understanding about other people and other people's problems, and I recognize that we shouldn't judge other people because we don't know what their journey is all about. We don't know what they planned, where they've been, or where they're going. And we're all just souls who are all connected to each other and to the source, and we're all just having a human experience on Earth, and we have to sort of recognize that other people for what they are. And I'm trying to do that. Certainly haven't gotten all the way by any means, but I'm getting way better at it. And I just think I have a happier life because of it.
So what's the greatest thing you learned from Albert that you would love people to do to help them in their lives too? What do you really want people to know?
I want people to know that we're all together. Every one of us, it looks like, when you see people walking down the street, you think, well, okay, I'm here and that person is over there and they're separate, and, everyone's sort of a separate entity. We're actually all connected. We're all part of the source. We're all part of God, and so we're all together. And so, literally when Jesus Christ said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and love others like yourself, I mean, he's basically saying that we're all together. I mean, we're if I harm another human being, I'm in effect harming myself. I'm harming because we're all part of God, part of the source. So if you look at things that way, then you'll just naturally be inclined to love and show more compassion and forgiveness and understanding for other people. And when we can do that, then of course we can slowly get rid of our fear and our anger and our hate and our greed and try to live in harmony with each other. And that also applies to the other creatures on our planet and to the Mother Earth herself. So that's really the roadmap, I think, is to understand who we are, where we came from, and where we're going.
Mm-hmm. And so your advice, if somebody runs into somebody that they just really are having a rough time with and they're just having a hard time loving them and seeing that they're part of it, what kind of action or thoughts could people take?
Well, you just have to sort of take a step back and say, okay, my natural reaction is to be angry at what has happened, but then you've got to stop and think, okay, this person is struggling with a life on Earth, and you don't know all the tests that they have set out for themselves and all the things they've experienced, and so you have to be compassionate and understanding and try to say, well, that could be me. They happen to choose that life, and I chose mine, but it could have been the other way around. So we have to be understanding and accepting of other people, and by all means, we should not judge people because of the color of their skin or their race or the God that they worship or anything else. I mean, we're all humans. We're all souls having a human journey, and if we understand that and accept that, I think we'll get along much better.
That's cool. One of the things for those of you listening out there, if you were raised Catholic or raised religious, and you also, like Garnet, had some issues with, God, that just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't seem like there'd be a God like that, or we're being punished, that kind of stuff. he mentions a lot of things in here that are flying in the face of the church and some of the taboos and some of the things that we've been raised to believe. And it makes a lot of sense. Albert's got some really good words of wisdom in here about how you can let that go, change it around, and really what the other perspective is. So, Garnet, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on our show. And is there any last words of wisdom? Are there any last words of wisdoms that you would like to impart to the people in the last 30 seconds we have?
Well, just to lighten things up, Albert had told me, he said, no matter what happens, remember, you can't go wrong or become lost. You're always going to end up back in the spirit side. So he said, you need to lighten up, enjoy your journey, enjoy your adventure, and try to learn the best you can, but know that you can never fail. And to me, that just sort of helped me sort of lighten up my day and understand that we shouldn't be so serious about what's going on around us.
I think that's huge advice. I tell people that I watched a show years ago. They were interviewing people in their 80s and 90s, and they said, if you could change anything about your life, what would it be if you could go back and change it? And almost all of them said, I wouldn't take it so seriously. So, wisdom and age. So please thank Albert for us, because I know you're still in contact with Albert. Yes, you still listen to your guides.
Yes.
I want to thank you again for being a great guest, for writing these books. I want people to know this book is called Dancing on a Stamp. He's also got Dancing Forever with Spirit. Garnet Schulhauser, thank you again for being a guest on our show.
Thank you, Pam. I enjoyed every minute. You're a delightful host.
Oh, thank you. And everyone, we'll be back with you next week with a great show again. So thank you for listening and have a great week. Bye.
AM 1290's quantum psychic Pam Oslie, thank you for your time and open mind in furthering the discussion of bringing the unknown to light in our daily lives, where spirit and science evolve and revolve around each other. The viewpoints expressed in this program are not necessarily those of AM 1290 or the Santa Barbara News Press. The program's validity is for you to decide. Yet, a leap forward in mankind's expanding consciousness requires a look within. Thanks for making the leap.